why aren't we planting trees with end-of-life use when we're making tree choices? If we're going to plant something, one of these days that tree's going to come down. And what if when it comes down, it can have a circular economy and move into some other fine
Absolutely.
product? Ta-da!
How do you do, sir?
Hello, Bob.
How you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Appreciate you taking a little time with us.
Oh, I love it. My friend Chris Alvarado just was telling me about a guitar he brought up to your guys' place.
Yep.
And that you found the right buyer for it, like lickety-split.
We sure did.
Man, he poured his heart into that guitar. I kept tabs with him the whole entire way.
Nice.
I love that guy.
How was your time at Fretboard Summit?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I spent the whole time like hanging out with guitar makers, which is I just love doing that.
Yeah.
You know, every person up there working on it is trying to solve a thing. They're like dedicating their life and their skill and their thinking cap to solve a thing. It could be their own skill, their craftsmanship, could be some thing that they think a guitar should be improved on, or how can they make something. And I love it. And I'm sort of like grandpa status, you know? So I walk around and they're like, I can't believe you stopped by, you know, I mean, and I'm like, why wouldn't I? Look what you're doing.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
let's geek out on this stuff, you know? It's just cool. You know, I love it.
Since you were just at the Fretboard Summit, you know, let's get into that a little bit. Like, do you find any kind of inspiration that you can pass along to the guys at Taylor when you're there?
Yeah, I see little bits here and little bits there. First of all, in like the factories that are making guitars, I always get inspired by Callings all the time. Those guys are super good friends of mine, and we sort of have a little mutual groovy thing going on. And Nully just made a new guitar that was sort of his design, you know, not quite vintage, not quite modern Callings, something in between. He was just dying to show me, and I just loved that guitar. It was really, really good. I love going in the Martin booth and see what they're making. You know, there's some nice guitars in there, and plus good friends everywhere. There's Megan Wall and Kyle Wall, no relation, but they both worked for Tom Ribicki, and they're making archtop stuff. Did you guys go?
Myself and one of the other guys from the shop did. Yeah, we saw both Tyler's and Megan's guitars. They were extraordinary.
So cool.
Yeah.
And those people whose work is just so fine. Jason, I can't say his last name right now. I took pictures of it, the rosette on his guitar.
Oh, Costal.
It's like, yeah, Costal.
We know
yeah.
Jason well, absolutely.
His guitars, wow.
Incredible.
Really, really good.
Yep. No doubt.
And so, yeah, I get a lot of inspiration, just all the nooks and crannies. There's some old codgers who do it for fun, and they're inspiring too, because they're keeping it fun, you know? Anyway, yeah. I love it.
So what was your idea behind creating this collection?
You know what? At 49 years and 11 months, I barely thought I had a legacy. But something sort of magical tickled me at 50 years. It's like, wait, stop the truck here for a second. It's 50 years. It's a half a century I've been doing this. And that 810 that you have right behind you, that's the first Taylor guitar. I have one of those. I made the first one. It was my guitar. And then it sprang into our first real Taylor model.
Awesome.
And it's 49 years old, 48 years old. It's the guitar I played. I'm like, I should remake this guitar. And we discussed it for, you know, I just called Monty, who's our VP of sales, right? And I'm like, this was March, you know, what do you think about this? What do we do, like a throwback guitar? You know, I kind of hate to say vintage because I don't know. I don't feel like I deserve to be in the vintage world yet. after 50 years. Either I got to go another, 20 or 30, and somebody's got to die. It's just so much easier if you're dead. And so, and I'm not planning to do that right away. I'd like to kind of hang on for a little while longer. But I said, what about an 810? And he's like, yeah. I go, I think that there would be people that could dig to find that guitar as a new guitar in a store available to buy. And Monty goes, well, what about the 855? I'm like, yeah, that is the guitar right there that kept us in business for our first 5 years. It's the guitar that Taylor Guitars got on the map for, was that 855.
Well,
right?
And could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I know that just boiling it down to just the playability of the guitar is way oversimplification, but I know that was such a paramount point of that guitar, was it was an approachable 12-string guitar that didn't feel like you were wrestling an alligator necessarily.
Well, the story goes something like this. We didn't know what we were doing. I made a few guitars in high school. Then I made 8 guitars at American Dream. And then we ended up buying the Dream from Sam for a few $1,000s, took over the lease. Guys know that story. Some of your listeners might not. We were kids. I was 19 on the day that we went into business as Taylor Guitars. And then I wanted to make a guitar that wasn't an American Dream guitar, thus the 810. But we had also made 12 strings at the Dream. It had that mustache bridge, had sort of that big, this body is refined. We did that in year 21 or something after we designed the Grand Auditorium, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is really the first Taylor guitar body shape that was where we defined what our shape aesthetic was going to really be, right? And so we decided, well, we need to go back and fix the curves on the Jumbo, the Dreadnought, the Grand Concert to make family harmony, okay? And so, but I made that 810 with the body size of, the guitars that I inherited from Sam Radding at American Dream, more squared off, more ugly, and less refined. There's not a lot of things prettier than a Martin Dreadnought. That's a pretty guitar, and this is a little more like that. It's not exactly like that. We were in San Diego, and right up the street from us was the 70s Laurel Canyon revolution of the California music scene. A&M Records just started with, Herb Alpert. David Geffen just started Geffen Records. Everybody moved into one big house, the Mamas and the Papas, and Jackson Brown, Don Henley and Glenn Fry were playing in Linda Ronstadt's band, and down below, Jackson Brown's pounded out on the piano this song called Take It Easy, and he couldn't finish it. And Glenn Fry's like, I am sick of hearing him doing that every day. I'm going to go down and help him finish that song, and in right at the, the alluvial plain of Laurel Canyon is Westwood, part of downtown LA. And there was Fred Wallace's Westwood Music, and Fred was a saint to all those young starting musicians. He'd let them come in and buy a guitar, pay me something every Friday,
Nice.
Pay me a little every Friday,
Nice.
right? And Kurt took guitars and went up to LA one day and found 3 dealers and that felt sorry for him. And Fred Wallace not only felt sorry for him, but kind of liked the guitars. They were easy to play and they weren't boomy.
Yeah.
And that was just what the doctor ordered for that day. And I'll say, better to be lucky than smart sometimes.
That's true.
I didn't know that I shouldn't make a guitar that wasn't easy to play. That didn't cross my mind. And my tone was sort of my tone. And then people go, we dig this tone because this is going to work in a studio. Mm-hmm. This is going to work with a band. a lot of those guys were electric guitar players, but they didn't play acoustic guitar at that time because they're like, I want to play acoustic, but I can't. If you remember, or if you have looked back, you guys aren't the age to remember, but I was alive and well then and watching it happen. And, acoustic guitars were hard to play. Electric guitars, you were an electric guitar player. You were in a rock and roll band from that time. Same time that John Denver was playing songs, so was Iron Butterfly. You know what I mean? Cream. Jefferson Airplane, which became Starship. Yep. The Grateful Dead. This kind of thing. And you would have never in those days ever seen someone with a Stratocaster, a capo on the 5th fret like they do now strumming chords. Right. You would have been laughed off stage, but you would see it, an acoustic guitar player. Well, these electric players would go, we'd love to get acoustic tracks, and I'd love to play some cool stuff, but I can't play acoustic guitars. They're too hard to play, but I can play yours. And turns out the engineer likes how they sound. They got some work done that day, right? And John Denver was playing a 12-string. Gordon Lightfoot was playing a 12-string. The Eagles put 12-string in things. Leo Kottke was popular. Peter Lang was popular. There was 12-string abounding, especially if you just took John Denver and Gordon Lightfoot. You were listening to 12-string every single day on the radio, multiple times. Sure. And so there were other people that, other musicians, other artists, they're listening to that and they want to do that too. Everybody wants to get in the swimming pool, right? Everybody wants to get in. And they played these things and they're like, wow, this thing's easy to play.
Nice.
And in the early days, in the early 80s, when I was at one of my favorite things I did when I went to Summit a couple of weeks ago is I gave Dean Zelensky a call. It's like, Dean, it's Bob, we got to get together, man. We haven't seen each other forever. And his booth used to be, when he's 19 years old and he's making the spinning ZZ Top guitars and every glam rock guitar and everything, just sailing high. He's got the Dean girls in their hot pants and, he's right across the street from Taylor Guitars, the Granola Guitar Company, And people would walk right by us, not even buy a guitar, but you'd hear them say, Taylor, man, those guys make such good 12 strings. I'm like, well, I got one for sale. They'd go into the Dean booth and order up, But that's kind of the story. It was easy to play, and it had a cool sound. Neil Young bought one. I went to see him play it in Russ Never Sleeps. People saw that. It was rewarding. Wild. I got to tell you, I went to see Russ Never Sleeps at big Cinerama Theater in San Diego, and I went with my buddies. I don't know how old I was. Was I 22 or 21 or I don't know, maybe 21? And we'd heard that he played it in there, but we didn't know. There was no YouTube to see a clip. We had to go buy a ticket, sit through it, and hope that moment comes. And all my buddies are like tapping the guys sitting in front of us. Hey, he made his guitar. Neil Young's going to play his guitar. And I'm like, shut up. You don't know that. Stop saying that. I'm just like dying of embarrassment and potential disappointment. But it came true. He did it. Awesome. And it was great.
Awesome. Super cool.
Now, do you see these guitars as a limited time offering or something that you're going to continually put out into production?
I think we'll continue to put out because I think guitar players will vote yes on that. It's a sound that's that a lot of people like. And you can't win guitar playing on sound or guitar building on sound. You can't do it because when I make a guitar that sounds more like you on it, this hand might go down, I would ask dealers when I give them a tour, if I ask you to raise your hand and say you think Taylor makes the best sounding guitars, and everyone gets nervous, I got 40 dealers there, he's going to ask me to raise my hand. I go, maybe 40% of you would raise your hand and say that. And they're like, we're surprised you would know that. I go, well, of course I know that. And if I make it to where change the sound to where it's the tone that you like the best, your hand would probably go down.
Yep.
Because we made that more clear, bright, cut-through sound
Mm-hmm.
that recorded well, amplified well, and played with, instead of playing with banjo and mandolin perfectly, it played with piano and bass and drums perfectly.
Sure. I agree.
Do you guys know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, you know, the guitars that Andy makes, they're more intonation. They have better harmony in the chords. The B-class bracing is great. It's a good cut-through guitar. You take the 814 CE Builder's Edition. I mean, what a wonderful guitar. We do great with all of his guitars. And he's been able to make guitars that have Taylor family sound, you know, with his twist on it. And he's such a dynamite player. He knows what he wants out of a guitar. But this is a different flavor. And for some people, this guitar is, oh, it's mom's spaghetti, you know?
It's like home.
It's what I remember.
Yep.
Well, and interesting you say that. The 810 that we've had here, not even for very long, just in the short amount of time we've had it, getting to know it, that's a sound that before it hadn't been on your menu for quite a few years. You know, it's just a very specific, separate sound.
Yeah, it's pleasing. It's the guitar that I liked the tone of that guitar. I liked it a lot. And can I tell you guys a confession?
Of course.
After I met Andy and I watched how he made guitars and I watched how he played, I came to a little bit of a realization, and that's that, you know, a lot of people would buy a Taylor guitar. I'm going to take classical guitars for an example. You might start with a student model, you take lessons, you get good, and your teacher says, okay, you're ready for a better guitar. And then you buy the next better guitar, and then you get really good. You graduate university with a degree, you're out there playing classical concerts, you win a contest, you get a little recording, you know, you start being maybe a master class teacher, and then you need a better guitar again because you know how to drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need a better guitar. Well, I noticed for a long time that often someone would have a Taylor guitar and they would get really good and go get a better guitar, a guitar that did some things better than what that guitar did. Some of Andy's guitars are like that. They're that better guitar for a super accomplished player.
Sure.
Right? One day I looked at Andy and I said, you know what, Andy? I kind of have a feeling that part of the success of Taylor over the years is that we make a guitar that sounds really good in the hands of an average or mediocre player, which is almost everybody. It certainly is me. And so, yeah, exactly. And so, and it never bothered me when I find someone that would have a Taylor Dreadnought or something like that, and then one day they migrate to a Collings Dreadnought. You know, I'm like, yeah, it's all out there. I mean, it's solving something for that person, right? And we got to be part of their musical experience, and we got to get them from point A to point B. And not everybody did it. I mean, what I'm talking about now could be fighting words with some people that still have their Taylor that's 40 years long, and it's like, oh, no, you don't, buddy. You don't say that guitar isn't good enough for me to be good on, because it is. But what I'm saying is just a generality. One thing I like about these guitars is if you're new to guitar, you can get the sound out of this guitar without being a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very good quality.
I mean, I kind of look at these guitars kind of like your milestones, like in like the lineage of Taylor guitars. What do you think there's other milestones for the company, and how do you feel like these guitars fit into all those?
Well, let's take, let me hold up the 514 CE, which we talked about a little bit before, okay? These are pretty simple guitars as far as their elaboration on them.
Right.
You know, all of those 800s, and this one is the same. Tortoise binding, nice clean lines, diamond inlays. cutaway. Those 800s are the first 20 years. This is the next 20 years.
I like that.
The 514 CE and the 714 CE. We could say that the Grand Auditorium built the Taylor Guitar Company, and especially the CE version of it. I'm great friends with Chris Martin. We talk. We're friends. I mean, he was 19 when I was 19, and he took over his family business, and I started. Yeah. This is 50th too. Yeah. I talked to him just the other day, right? And he's said many a time that the Martin Dreadnought is like the most copied guitar shape ever, and he's 100% right. But I think that our GA Cutaway, the 14 CEs, are the second most.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would agree too.
And me and Larry Breedlove worked together on that. Yeah. We had the idea, and Larry was with us. Larry was with us for a long time. I'm not sure if you guys know, but out of this little Lemon Grove place came Stelling banjos, Deering banjos, Taylor guitars, Goodall guitars, Breedlove guitars. All of that came out of that little shop.
Amazing.
At the American Dream.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And who would have thunk, right? and it happens where it happens, and it's kind of a cool thing. There are other builders that people have heard less of that have a small shop and they build and they learn their chops in that era. And there were some good musicians that came out of that little local hang too. But the thing is when I hit this 50 years, I thought, well, I guess I do have a legacy. And let's go ahead and offer it and see what happens. These guitars, we know how to make them. We have the tools. We could open up the crates, we go in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, warehouse, pry open the crates, take out the shredded, wood packing material, and it's like, there's a bracing jig. There's a side bender. It's cool. We love doing it. And people around Taylor are like, I already said it once. I'll say it again. It's like mom's spaghetti.
Right.
It's pretty cool. Right. I think these guitars are worthy to exist. It's true. If I go back to the dealer's question, raise your hand. My next question would be, if I ask you to raise your hand if you think we make the best playing guitar, I wouldn't even get the sentence out. 100% of the hands would go up.
Right.
And then I would say, or how about the most consistent coming into your store?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And then I went on to explain to my dealers, we'd have them in 40 at a time, for tacos and guitars. I mean, who doesn't want that? and I said, I spent my career realizing that I can't win on sound. Nobody can win on sound. It's way too subjective. I just want to be in the ballpark. I want to be a part. I want to be in the ballpark of what we would call good sound. I don't want to be on the outside looking in. I want to be in there. And maybe one guy's playing third bass and one guy's playing second bass. We each have a little area to cover inside that ballpark, but I'm in there. Once I'm there, I'm cool with it. But what is way more objective is, does that guitar play well, and is it consistently manufactured and put into a store in a ready-to-sell condition?
Yep.
And that's what I tried to graduate with a degree in, is getting that part done.
Yep.
And I love factories, and I think factory-made guitars they're wonderful. So are handmade, bench-made guitars. Sure. But if you think of what are all the super valuable guitars that people sought after are seeking, price has gone up. Almost all of them were made in a factory at some point in time. Yeah. You can get your chops down in a factory and do a good job.
Well, and was going to say not everybody, but the reality is most folks aren't necessarily swinging for a, luthier built, one-off custom made instrument sometimes ever in their life, so you're able to provide, instruments and music to folks that are,
They want a good guitar.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's charming to me and heartwarming that someone will come up to me, meet me, and it's like, oh, I have a Taylor. I just love it so much. It's just such a good guitar. I'm like, really? What model do you have? A Baby.
Awesome.
And I'm like, my inside reaction is like that, but then I stop and think about it, and I go, well, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's awesome that they love that. They're having a great experience with that thing.
Absolutely.
And they love it. And one day they, I'd say my most proud guitar is the GS
Sure.
Mini.
Rightly so.
It's like, it's not too precious. I have a friend that calls it the people's guitar. Bob, you should call it the Volks guitar.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. We've made 500,000 of those. And if you're a great player, you want one. And if you're a beginner player, you want one. And if you lose it, you can get another one. Yeah, you're going to lose the scratches and the love and the experiences, but you can get another one, And you don't feel like you have so much into it that you can't take it with you and use you. And if you go on a trip to Europe and you take it, when you come home and you play your full-size guitar, you're like, I remember that. But while you're gone, that guitar's getting the job done.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and funny enough, I was just speaking with one of my customers a couple days ago, specifically about the traveling with the GS Mini. And he said, he goes, man, the amount of times I've gotten onto a plane and the flight attendant refers to it as a GS Mini. They know exactly what it is because they've seen so many of them flying around. That's pretty interesting.
Well, it's funny when you say too many. I've always wanted to be able to make a lot of guitars. I had no idea that it would be this. So I'm super blessed about that. But, I always said we can't win market share without making the guitars. You got to make and so sometimes I go, well, you can run, but you can't hide from a tailor. It's going to track you down somewhere.
Sure.
We put a lot of guitars out there. And I think and at 50 years, I don't mind talking about it.
Sure. Absolutely.
One of your legacies is sustainable guitars because of what you're doing.
You see a lot of, when we got into urban woods, we realized that we really are the first product ever to exist that can use a street tree, and it's not a limited thing with a plaque on. It's not the Liberty Tree guitar.
Right.
We made this Mini, and it's a great story. No, it's a guitar that you can buy any day, anywhere in the world where there's a guitar store. You can buy that guitar and know that it came from a tree that came down in the county of Los Angeles, and it had to come down. And 1 out of 10 of those, or 20, might be a good enough tree to make guitars. Right. And that log is recognized by West Coast arborists, and they bring it in and they cut it into blocks for us, and we turn it into guitars. And that wood costs more than other wood. Some people think, oh, it's free wood. No, it's not. I mean, you want free wood, go to a third world country where people are barefoot and they're dragging stuff with a mule. You want expensive wood, get a tree in the middle of LA, with 400, orange cones around it, 16 guys with vests and hard hats and booms and trucks and safety devices and OSHA, and then go cut that in Los Angeles. That would turns into something. But that tree gets a whole second life, and it's a way to even bring on the conversation about why aren't we planting trees with end-of-life use when we're making tree choices? If we're going to plant something, one of these days that tree's going to come down. And what if when it comes down, it can have a circular economy and move into some other fine product? So I never really wanted a customer to go buy the eco guitar. I just wanted them to buy a guitar, and I'm going to take care of that for them.
Yeah.
We're going to make that 314 CE Builder's Edition made from chamois ash. You know, the urban ash. That's a pretty eco-friendly guitar. It's our ebony. We're replanting it. We've gotten 45,000 ebony trees in the ground now. We don't own any of them. We're just we pay the villages to plant them. You know, I fund the whole thing. Now we're starting to get other funders because we're 7 years into this and have success. We're planting fruit trees. We've planted almost as many fruit trees. So we're looking at food security for these villages. When I started traveling the world and looking where tropical woods come from, I thought, these guys they're not invited to the party. We're having a party, and the people who got the wood, they're not invited. They're living a really basic existence.
Yeah.
Their materials are being taken. There's nobody putting back. And it's like, I want them to be invited to the party. I want you and me and someone who buys this guitar to know that, you know, I did a little video once, and I talked about, you know, I was just holding up some fingerboards I was in, and it's like, this fingerboard has a name. It has a name like Olo and Fabrice and Dongo, you know. It has a name because these people are out there getting this stuff in ways that none of us would do.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And they drag that in, and so we need to honor all of that stuff and honor the people and come back into, when we started the Ebony Project, here's what we discovered. Everybody knows how to cut that tree. Nobody knows how to grow that tree or even plant it, you know. So that's great. We're planting koa like gangbusters in Hawaii. And the cool thing about that is a lot of that koa we own, a lot of the koa we don't own, but I bought 560 acres of beautiful soil on the side of Mauna Kea that's not in the volcanic zone. Mm-hmm. It's up the mountain a little bit, and those trees will be ready in 30 years, and that's not that far out.
Right.
And there's enough koa there to supply Taylor and others forever.
Wow.
If you just keep that forest going and don't just cut it all down and start all over.
Right.
So there's ways to do it, and we're small. The footprint, I did a thing once where I showed the 560 acres, and I just used Google Earth to do a pullout, you know, like they do in a movie.
Sure, yep.
And it's like, this property, which could raise all the koa that we need, is a dot on the island.
Yeah.
And then I pull out and I go, and the island is a dot on the earth.
Right.
You pull out far enough, you can't even see Hawaii.
Yeah.
And a couple of dots here and there could grow wood for guitars, you know. So to me, I think of them as demonstration projects, you know. So if you could prove it could be done, maybe others will do it too. Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the guitar community, not that I can speak for all of us, but thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's the joy of my life. This whole thing has been, you know. And it gave me more than I ever planned. So I have some money. It's good to use money, and it's good to use it in those kind of ways.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Guitar making's been a beautiful thing for me, and you guys earn your living at it. You're around it all the time. We so much appreciate you being the face to the customer that tells our story, and we can entrust you to do that, and you can dig what we do, and you dig what other people do. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that makes the world go around.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking about sustainable Tonewood, what do you think is the most underutilized one?
White oak.
White oak.
I think we're going to find our way to that someday. Now that I've announced it, maybe I'll be second to use it. But white oak makes really fine musical instruments. And it's right here, and there's a lot of it. You know, probably finding the trees that are selected that are big enough. I like to say, just because it's a mahogany tree doesn't mean it's a guitar mahogany tree.
Right,
sure.
You know, and so even with white oak, but, you know, it's really good wood.
Awesome.
And how we made the Tasmanian Blackwood guitars for so long. Now when we make Blackwood guitars, it's California black. It's the same species, but just grown in California streets, Northern California. Yeah.
Very cool.
But I think that's an easy answer. I think that's an underutilized wood. I'd like to see us get into that at some point.
I hope so.
The urban ash sort of fills the same basket.
Yeah.
And there's only to start a wood, to get a wood popular, first you have to find out if it makes a good guitar. Okay, check, yes. Now I have to find out if I can get the wood. Mm-hmm. The only way I can find out if I can get the wood is to buy it, not buy a sample. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you an order for the next year that you have to fill every month, and we'll see how that turns out at the end of the year. And by the way, if you're a small operation, please don't go buy a new house based on this 12 months worth of orders, because at the end of 1 year, I'm going to stop ordering.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to make those guitars, probably in a limited edition, 500. Then I'm going to do another 500. And if it turns out that people dig it or that we get it right, okay, now we have something. So from thought to market is usually about 4 years and a lot of risk. Yeah, sure. It's a pretty long time. Because if we're going to make a model, we have to know that it wasn't just a limited, right?
Sure.
And so we do all of those things. So there'll come a time when we'll start messing around with white oak.
Nice.
And some people are starting to use the sunken cypress from down south.
Sure.
I think didn't Chris have that on the guitar product?
That was on the session model that they drove up to us, was one of the dark forest sinker cypress from Aaron.
Yeah, so we've been working with Aaron. We've been testing that wood, and we'll probably see some catch guitars next year with that sinker cypress.
Can't wait.
Which is really, really cool.
We're going to show up early this year, next year, and grab those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Aaron's been, for those of you maybe that don't know, Aaron Lucas of Dark Forest Cypress Tonewoods has just been a delight to work with, and I know virtually every builder or luthier company that works with him echoes the same sentiment. So,
yeah, I really like the guy. And Richard Hoover made a beautiful Santa Cruz guitar with his stuff that I saw at the last show, and that was a wonderful, wonderful guitar.
No doubt. Cool to have a new option on the menu, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Really. And talk about expensive wood, that's wood that takes a lot of work to go get. I mean, it's there. It's there, but you got to go get it.
Heck of a story.
He's a great story.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, really, really wonderful guy. I had a chance to run into him and chit-chat and talk and meet him face to face. He told me at Summit, when he told me on the phone when he contacted me, he goes, well, I saw you looking at Richard's guitar at Santa Cruz, but I was too embarrassed to introduce myself. I'm like,
humble guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely non-guitar related. If I can throw you a curveball here, are you a watch guy at all, Bob?
Yes, I am a watch guy. I don't keep up with buying new watches like I did at one time, but I probably have about 20 watches. Nice. And I could tell you what I love about watches. The whole study of horology, which is the study of timekeeping, right, is the backbone of all machine tools and like factory type work, right? And there's so many innovations. And did you ever read the book Longitude by Davis Sobel?
No.
Which tells the story of solving where you were on Earth in the sea by having two clocks, one that carries your home time with you and one that you reset to noon every day.
Okay.
And the difference between the time every hour is 15 degrees east or west. So when you get to high noon, you've reset this one, you leave that one, you leave England and you leave that one. You know where you are from England.
Wow.
Okay, we're 27 minutes away. We can figure out where our longitude is. And it was a carpenter named John Harris in England who invented the grasshopper escape mechanism for grandfather clocks. He invented the bimetal coupling for a pendulum, because when a pendulum would get warm, it would get longer or shorter and swing at different rates. So he made steel and brass that would slide, and it would always stay the same length. And then he made the first clock that could go on a ship. It was a behemoth thing, you know. And then 5 years later, they were down to small watches, and they were everywhere. Every ship on Earth had one.
Wild.
You know. And then there was the Dollar Watch Company, which is an American company in World War I, and they had to make watches because they'd have to this is like guitar making. They'd have to file the gears to match. And someone said, we need a watch that can cost $1 that a GI can have in Europe, and it would tell time. And you know how they did it? They sorted. They said, look, all these gears are coming out different shape and size. All we're going to do is come down and put this gear with that gear. And that gear, they just sorted. And they matched gears, and they quit hand filing.
I see.
You know?
Wow.
And all of those things that they did to learn to do watches catapulted. I mean, we benefit today.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a watch guy.
I'm glad I asked. And to follow up on that, do you have a favorite daily wearer that you go to?
Right now, I'm wearing this watch. It's called Weiss. It's a guy who started making watches in Los Angeles. He's moved to Nashville. Where is the camera? There we go.
Okay.
Nice.
Let me turn
Kind
this
of a pilot
around.
style?
Yeah, it's kind of a pilot style. I like it. It's very simple. I have some elaborate watches, too. This one is... when it comes to nice watches, it's the GS Mini. You know what I mean? It's a nice watch I can wear every day. I could bang it around. I took the leather strap off and put a rubber strap on it. But I have a couple IWC watches. One of them is the perpetual calendar that tells you the seconds, the minutes, the hours, the day, which months have different days of the month, which years are leap years, the phases of the moon.
Wow.
All with one, it's all done with gears and levers.
Incredible.
It knows the phase of the moon 99 years from now on that day, all with gears and lever. When you start with the fastest movement all the way down to the thing that starts counting the centuries, it's a 1 billion to 1 basically ratio. I got to go, you know, you have a clinic and someone, you know, we always call meet your maker. You know, I would go to a store like yours or somebody's, and customers would come in and ask questions, or maybe like we're doing now. I went to one of those for the designer at IWC, and he had designed a new one of these, and someone said, I use this as an analogy for Andy too. Someone said, how do you design these watches that have that complication? You know what his answer was? I see it in my head. Any questions?
Lots.
And that's what I love about Andy's guitar building, is he sees it in his head.
Sure.
And so many, for me, how to make a guitar, how to get it made, I see it in my head, you know. And these guitars behind you, I think we have successful sound on those, but all the other things about it that are super objective, I just kind of see it in my head. And I loved his answer. I'm like, yeah, so there's another person like that has the guts to just say it. It's okay, I guess, for me to do this for 50 years and go, well, I'm freakishly good at making things, you know? And, you know, Andy has a lot of great talent. And what part of the reason he came is I asked him a question. I go, Andy, you know, you have a talent. How are you going to spend it? Right now you're spending it for 12 customers a year, but you could help actually make a lot of customers happy with their guitar playing. You could support dealers, employees at Taylor, and help even migrate the state of the art of what a guitar even is, you know? And he goes, yeah, that's a good way to spend my talent. He wasn't looking for fame, fortune, money. He had a perfect thing going, but he he took it as I have a talent, I need to spend it, you know? And so that's what I've done. That's what you guys are doing.
Yep.
I tend to thank employees that are doing a good job. I'll say thank you for spending your talent with us.
Nice.
You know?
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, we really, really appreciate you spending the time with us today. And we'll see you in another 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll see you before that.
Hope-
Seeing you in 50 years, you know, I might have to have like AI do the talking.
You and me both.
Same.
Okay, you guys, it was really a pleasure talking to
Appreciate
you.
you.
And thank you so much for the representation. And I really hope that, you know, you pair up the right person with these
Oh, we
guitars.
will. We
You know,
will.
it's just the right. We say when we're planting trees, right tree, right location. You know,
There you go.
and then you have a formula for
you
success.
go.
And it's same with this guitar. Right guitar, right player.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so
Bob.
much.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
We appreciate it.